Good evening and welcome to this episode of the 1871 podcast. As you can tell, it's going to be about the run into the rest of this season. We're joined by Jonathan Lowe, local reporter for the Berkshire Live, and Eunan Carr stepping in tonight as well with myself. So bear with us, folks. It's going to be a bumpy journey like the last two games of the season. So welcome, Jonathan, to your first 1871 podcast. How are you?
Hello, yeah, all good, thank you. I thought, have I been on here once before? I can't remember. Is it my debut performance? I think perhaps.
For this one, nice. Don't mention the other ones.
This one, okay. No, I'm sure I might have been on here before, but if not, then yes, it's nice to be on.
Or I'm just losing it and can't remember. That's the other part of it. So, Eunan, how are you? How's the nerves?
Yeah, I'm well today. A bit better than the last time I was on, which I just got back from a flight. So just a day's work today. So I'm good, thanks. And just trepidation of the next couple of games, obviously, and it'd be interesting to talk about it, especially with Jonathan being the Evening Post reporter and asking a few questions about what's going on at the days select as we know it now.
Yeah. As you say, for the YouTube people, I've worn a lucky shirt from the old 2005 season. Hopefully it'll bring us some luck. And my goodness, the shirts were big back in those days. Look at that. Fit the whole family there.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, we'll crack on. So, where do we start? Coventry defeat's probably as good as any. What's your views on that? And I guess, Noel Hunt coming in. You've been involved, obviously, with Paul Ince being there. What's your take on that transformation, the difference with Hunt instead of Ince, and where we're at as we are with 2 games to go?
Well, where do we start on that? I mean, it's certainly, I do feel a managerial change was highly necessary. It was required. Time will tell if it was too late. It would appear so. But certainly Noel Hunt has, the 2 home games that have been so far, there's really been such a better feeling about the place. I think maybe not necessarily a brilliant feeling considering the circumstances, but certainly the mood. It certainly felt like around the place was very much lifted. Yeah. Obviously, they didn't get the ideal results. I mean, most of the season we'd be saying that a draw against Burnley would be great, but given the circumstances, as I said, points are precious now, and ideally it would have been nice that they could have got 3 points in one of those 2 home games. So he's given them a chance. Morale seems to be slightly higher than it was, certainly among the supporters, and it is what it is. I mean, it's difficult now with two they're going to be very tough games coming up, and it's very difficult to see them staying up. But they've given themselves a glimmer of hope, and certainly with Noel Hunt, he's a fresh pair of eyes. It's some fresh ideas coming in, and a fresh approach to things, which, as they is what they needed. Just unfortunately, it looks like it probably is going to be too late.
Yeah. It's I think with Ince, it was inevitable in the end, wasn't it? With the negativity, you deal with him in press conferences. How did you find that with him towards the end?
I mean, to be honest, like from a sort of personal, relationship perspective, he was very good. He was always, willing to front up and answer questions. Some of the lines he did trot out did get a bit tiresome, and the way he did throw the players under the bus, seemingly almost every game. I didn't feel was a very good man management. Obviously, I'm sure, hopefully, he would have said something different behind closed doors, but I don't think that did him any favors. What he said. And he had a point with the points deduction and the transfer embargo and the injuries, and they've had some big players out this season as well, and they still do. But ultimately, he has to take his manager. He was manager. He takes responsibility, and it was, I mean, you saw it on social media, and you kind of feel it sort of towards the end of his tenure that it's just it was a real grind, and performances ultimately reflected that.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of a large part as to why they are where they are today.
And what do you think with Noel coming in? I mean, obviously he's brought a bit more of a positive vibe. What do you make of his approach and his manner as the head manager of the team?
Well, I think he certainly he brings kind of a good energy to things. Sort of, I think the players seem to be a bit more up for it compared with previous weeks. And I mean, you're always going to get that with any manager, I suppose. But certainly, kind of you can see his enthusiasm and passion for the club really shines through, and hopefully that kind of transmits onto the players. Again, it just would have been really interesting to had they made that change sort of with 7, 8, 9, 10 games to go rather than just the 5, whether that would have made a difference in the grand scheme of things. So he obviously knows the club inside out. He knows the fans. He gets the club, and vice versa. And he's provided a real kind of positive outlook as much as he can do. The home games that we've had have been great, but he's got experience with the 21s as well. He's had a couple of spells as caretaker manager as well in previous jobs, so he's not totally new to it. But it's all about getting the best out of the players, isn't it? As a manager, and he'll do the best as he can the remaining couple of weeks, and we'll see where it takes him, really.
Yeah, and I'm sure you notice the difference as well. The trust he has in the younger players, doesn't he, compared to Paul Ince? I think that's a big difference, isn't it? The management style that they have, the young lads that have come in.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Kind of Paul Ince did say he had no problem throwing in youngsters, but then kind of never did. It's kind of same, I think, with Paul Clement as well, and possibly a few other managers. And I mean, to be fair to them, they're the ones who see the players in the training ground every day. They see a lot more than what fans and people like myself do as well. So you have to trust their judgment. It's a big ask throwing pretty young, inexperienced professionals into the thick of a relegation battle, which is obviously what Reading are in. On the flip side, they do bring that energy and that no fear attitude, which could help them. And a couple of performances have been all right, haven't they? Mamadi Kamara has done well, and Kelvin Abrafa and Kelvin Batioman has done all right as well. So yeah, I've mastered that now. So yeah, I mean that's obviously positive for the future. There's some positive signs going forward. It's nice for fans to see younger players come through the ranks. Possibly been spoilt the last few years with people like Michael Olise and Omar Richards and Danny Loda, who's doing well out in Portugal at the moment. So but yeah, certainly there is a small core group of youngsters coming through and showing that they can that they can cut it as much as they can at the moment at championship level, which is great to see.
Yeah, definitely. Eunan, I'll bring you in now. Thanks for being so patient.
Yeah, that's all right. Just thinking then around the way the season has gone, and the question I had in my mind is around the 6-point deduction. And when the rumour came out, what was the underlying reaction? Because my theory is that we were still in the running for a playoff spot at that point when that rumour happened, and how that affected the whole group of players, because we went on a run of 7 or 8 defeats on a trot, and that's was far worse than a 6-point deduction. If at that point it was managed correctly, we possibly wouldn't have been on that. But what was the rumour then at the time, Jonathan, around the camp, and what you picked up at the time?
I'm not sure they were that close to the playoffs. I think that might have been slightly wishful thinking.
Points-wise, when the rumour came out, points-wise, I know it was just if you imagine, we might have been 6 or 9 points behind the playoff position then. So with the 6 points, that was game over then. So
yeah. I mean,
and so that demoralised the group. I don't know what because I just felt that was the time when it could have been that we're not going to get to the playoffs, but the risk is the relegation. And Ince reflected on the injuries that we were on, and the fact that the young players, he couldn't blood them and he didn't trust them. He made quite a few comments about the quality. The wrong kind of messages were coming out via the media, and it just that, I know it's hindsight and you can't do anything about it now, and we've got the next 2 games to turn it around because we need the 6 points, and I'm sure there's no reason why we can't get those 6 points, because they're teams that we should beat throughout the season if the team selection's right and the right approach. This reflecting on Ince and the point when we got the 6-point deduction was the kind of pivot to it all went wrong from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what kind of Ince was saying, he'd been told that it was happening, or was certainly a strong possibility, and then obviously it came out, and then we had the wait for so long, and it really was a weight on everyone's shoulders. I mean, they tried to brush it off as much as they could, but ultimately it was hanging over their shoulders, and I think that there was an acceptance at the club that it was coming. They were aware of the situation, and they obviously wanted that over as much as everyone else. They wanted that clarity moving forward. Ultimately, it came, I think, after the international break as well, wasn't it? So it really gave Reading a very little time to sort of recover and mentally get back in the right mindset and have the right approach going into the final few games of the season. So in that respect, it's in normal circumstances, had they been sort of mid-table, it would have kind of freed them up, I'm sure, and allowed them to play a bit better football than they were. But ultimately, I think it has had a really draining effect on everyone at the club, and certainly towards the end of Ince's tenure. I mean, they've given it one last sort of kickstart with the arrival of Noel Hunt, but as I say, kind of results are not picking up enough, haven't picked up enough, and it's given them a huge task going into these final couple of games. Yeah,
and it's just it's not good to reflect back on what's gone wrong. It's looking against these next 2 games, and it's just the game I went to see was the Burnley game, and I watched the Luton game as well. And with the Burnley game, the setup seems that you've got Mark Bowen up in the stands, perhaps, and he's got his coach, first team coach assistant with Noel Hunt. So do you get any indication that that's a good setup going forward?
Well, I mean, I think you're referring to James Oliver Pearce, the first team coach. So he was in the stand when Ince was in charge. Ince obviously had his assistant Alex Ray, Tony Warner, the goalkeeping coach, and a couple of other staff. Oliver Pearce was brought in by Bowen last summer. He's now on the touchline alongside Hunt and Eddie Niedzwiecki. I mean, Bowen's always been kind of watching on from the director's box, so I'm sure he's had a strong say in how this coaching setup has come about for these last few games or so, because obviously he had Eddie Niedzwiecki as his assistant when he was Reading manager, so he knows him, he trusts him. He's a very experienced bloke and excellent coach as well. So having someone him alongside Noel Hunt, in theory should be a good blend and a good kind of range of ideas that they can bounce off each other. So I think Bowen has got what he wants in terms of the best he could asked for really for these last few games, having felt the need for a managerial change. And it remains to be seen what his plan and vision and what he thinks the best staff are going to be for moving forward. But in terms of short-term fix, I don't think he could have done too much else. I don't think you're going to get anyone, people like Steve Bruce going to come in for 5 games and try and turn the club around like that. It had to have been an internal appointment, just given the timing of the sacking of Ince. It's had its effect in terms of giving the place a bit of a lift, picking up somewhat surprising results, but we go back to it, just the results are just, they might have been all right, but they haven't been good enough.
Yeah, and the sort of performances, it was like the sending off of Andy Carroll. What was the sort of reaction that you got, asking questions about that one and moving forward into the next 2 games? Do you think it's kind of settles? He's going to come in for the next 2 games, want to prove something for the fans?
You like to think so. I think he does sort of wear his heart on his sleeve, doesn't he? And
yeah,
he is very committed. And everyone will have their own opinion about that second yellow card. It was just bizarre more than anything, wasn't it? Obviously, clearly it was very stupid and just perhaps more heat of the moment or something. But obviously he's a big personality, he's a big character around the place, in every sense. And he's someone who's been there and seen there and done it at the highest level, and hopefully he can draw on his experience to really kind of galvanize the players to push forward and have a strong end to have a strong couple of weeks. So I'm sure he won't want to have League One on his CV. He's obviously under contract for another year at Reading, so I'm sure he'll be doing his everything to get the goals required to keep Reading up.
Yeah, like I was, the last time Reading went down into 3rd tier was the last game of Elm Park, so it's it would be fans travelling away to Huddersfield. Hopefully, I think we'll still be in with the shout of survival no matter what happens on Saturday. I don't think we'll go down on Saturday if we lose, but it's just that feeling that it doesn't feel as if we're going to go down because we've got the quality team to stay up. But team selection, do you get any indication what the team will be on Saturday?
No, not yet. No, I'm afraid I don't have any. I'm not going to be naming the 11. I'm afraid, as much as I'd like to. But... no, it obviously, and Andy Carroll's suspended, isn't he? He's got a 2-game ban, so he'll be out. And but I'm sure that whoever's on the pitch will give it their best shot, and we just have to hope that they can draw on the spirit of a couple of performances against Wigan in the previous years at home. That Mayday last-minute header, that possibly something to draw upon, that inspiration.
Jonathan, do you think we can stay up? Do you believe we can stay up? Have you got faith?
As you can kind of tell from my demeanour, it's diminishing rapidly. Yeah. It's just those results over the weekend really went against them, and it's going to be a big ask now, I think. Obviously it more than likely will go to I think it definitely goes to the final day, which is perhaps something, but I don't really like the fact of playing against a Neil Warnock side it's I can't see it going well, unfortunately.
You can't pick the Championship, can you? It's the most bizarre league, I think, in football, isn't it? That game on Saturday where you go Burnley, QPR. You get a goal back, and you just go, okay. And then all the other results, but then God knows what's going to happen on Saturday.
What you want at this stage of the season is just a couple of teams in mid-table with nothing to play for, and that's your best chance of getting a result. Because as we can see, basically bottom can beat top, because they're obviously fighting for different reasons, and you want to be playing like who's mid-table these days at Bristol City or a club like that. That's who they needed on the last day.
And John, just because you've been covering Reading now for how many years now? 5, 6 years?
Too many.
Yeah. What, like, you've been there through, well, pretty much a lot of bad times, not so many good. What's your take on the whole owners and where things are going now? We've had such it's been a disaster, really, isn't it? With this points deduction after last year's points deduction. Do you feel things are moving forward in a positive way? Do you think that do you think the owners could walk? Is it that kind of, if we do go down?
I like to think that things are slowly moving in the right direction. I think with the appointments as we've seen behind the scenes, I think that is an indication that the club is slowly building some foundations in place for the future. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, but they've got some good people in good places, I think. Mark Bowen as head of football operations, and people will say like Eddie Nizdevecki coming back in. We've got Jared Dublin, the head of scouting, who comes with a good pedigree. And a few other sort of Mark Carey, the director of recruitment as well. So, I think things are slowly taking shape. Obviously, we've got a lovely training ground. The stadium's there. The infrastructure is all there. Unfortunately, just need the decision making to be right at the very top. And unfortunately, that's something that's Dai Young has been found wanting on for quite a number of years now. And you'd like to think he's learned from his mistakes, and hopefully this latest 6-point deduction is really the end of it. From what we're hearing, that the transfer embargo should hopefully be lifted this summer, albeit there will be, I think, still a few checks on spending, so there won't be any sort of massive spending spree. But and they've still got a very good academy in place as well. So. And hopefully that will go back up to Category 1. So,
would that be affected? Do you think, if we went down to League One, the Category 1 status for the academy? Does that get, if we go down from the Championship? Do you think we could loot? That wouldn't. I don't know. I'm just asking. It's a possibility.
It's a good question. I don't know. I think there will probably be a pretty unique situation to have a third-tier club, potentially playing in the Premier League 2 or whatever it's called, Premier League 2 Division 2. I will have to check that one up actually, but I don't think so, because I mean, it's, I say that they've got requirements in place, to nurture the young players to come through. So I don't think it should matter, no.
And on the side that, the women's team had a poor result on Sunday as well. They're under the threat of relegation. It's not really looking great both sides, is it, at the minute? What do you think that they could stay up this season?
Well, I mean, they can stay up just as much as Reading can stay up. But I've seen that the table is equally close, isn't it, in the WSL as well? So it's probably going to go down for the last couple of games. And but yeah, I mean that they've I've been following their progress, and they, just like the men's side, really, they're kind of prone to conceding kind of sloppy goals and late goals as well, and it's left them in the position that they are. So there's probably sort of wider issues about sort of lack of funding in the women's side, and getting the enough support through, and but it has been a real struggle, and it's sad to see both sides a real threat of relegation.
Yeah, definitely. Eunan, I'll bring you back in now.
Yeah, just on that point on the threat of relegation and the what if, how it's affecting, because you talk about the embargo, but with the debt the club's in, going to that tier 3, it's a real danger of clubs like Scunthorpe are down there at the moment, aren't they? And Luton have come all the way back up again, and that's possible that's what will happen. There's a real danger especially if the owner comes out. But yeah, in the background, I do agree. The structure seems to be moving in the right direction. It's just the results on the field haven't been right. And you think about some of the decisions of hiring managers. Mick Gooding's, I don't think it was a rant. It was just a passionate from the heart thing on BBC Radio Berkshire after the game that we lost. I'm a bit gloomy because of the decisions that have been made with Ince, and not getting, not that he should have been, the sack is a bit strong, but it was, Bowen and the decision making on that. If they knew that this wasn't right, surely we could have got in a proper manager and replaced it. Him where we are now, I'm a bit gloomy about the next two games, even though Noel Hunt's come in and definitely boosted the morale around the place, and particularly, playing a lot better, and the brand of football that, Reading fans insist on, a brand of football. And that's where there's a bit of a discourse in what's been delivered on the pitch, whereas all the background seems to be getting into place, from the organisation and everything. Then that's true. But I think, a bit doom and gloom really from me. But I don't know how you feel, Jonathan, about it's coming across from you that you're a bit of the same.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I mean, what Reading have lacked, I think others have said it, but that they've lacked a good manager for a long time. A good, man manager, someone who knows how to get the best out of players, who can, deliver a consistent run of results, and can get players and fans on side, and know the Championship, and Yapstam had a good season, then it completely tailed off. Paul Clement, was just more of a coach rather than a manager. People like Gomez and Veljko Paunovic. Bowen did all right in his last in his short stint as manager, but generally they haven't had a decent manager, arguably since sort of Brian McDermott, probably. They had Nigel Adkins as well, but that didn't really work out. But they've been crying out for a good, experienced manager, and Paul Ince wasn't the one. I didn't feel he was going to be the one to take Reading forward in the long term, and that would be my reservation with Noel Hunt. He does have somewhat limited experience. But on the flip side to that, there is also the fact that there are people now in place behind the scenes to help him, whereas before there wasn't really much help, as we saw with Paunovic in his final days, final months really. We were bombarding him with questions about ownership and recruitment and scouting and everything, and I'm sure you would have loved to say, please speak to my chief exec or the owner or anything, but there was no one to speak to, and he had to field all the questions. Whereas at least now there is a bit more of a structure in place to ensure that the manager does everything, can concentrate and focus fully on matters on the field rather than the kind of the big noise off it.
And that's it really with Noel Hunt coming in. Confident that this because of the structure in place is moving forward, and that's the question around Mark Bowen's this guy he brought into, can't remember his name again, the guy who's on the touchline now.
James Oliver.
We had Colin Lee with Mark McGee, and I sort of compare Mark McGee with Noel Hunt because they're both ex-strikers, but Mark McGee came as a player manager to start with, and he built up and got a good understanding of the club, and went on to form probably the foundations of what happened in those past years. And I hope Noel Hunt gets that opportunity, but is it going to be in the lower league, or if it's in the Championship, as you say, does he have that experience and know how to deal with those players? on a week-to-week basis, where it's trying to get, as you say, a consistent run of performances. But speculation who's on the card. Dylan, who's co-host here most of the time. What's the thoughts on that? Do you have any sort of word? Because he's not on the list. He's not even on the odds on sort of main papers, betting slips and stuff, so on. But he'd know the Reading kind of way because of the way he plays the game.
Yeah. I mean, I think as I mentioned, they need someone who gets the club, who gets the fans, who gets the championship, who has that experience and knowledge and knows how to get the best of players. And Dylan's got experience in South Africa, hasn't he? And plenty of it as well. So I don't see why he shouldn't be in consideration. Because they as we've said, they need a fresh pair of eyes to look at things, and the help is there for the new manager. That say the scouting and recruitment should, you got a big hand with that, and providing the owner still sticks around, you've got some solid cash reserves behind you. So it's arguably it's a very attractive job for someone out there. Some people might argue it's a bit of a mess to come into, and but I guess what job isn't that doesn't have that sort of risk these days, certainly in the championship. And I guess they all know, these managers, that they're probably not going to be in it for the long haul. So if they can provide a little kick, even for a short period, then they're in a win-win situation. So we'll see. But I think for the time being, it's the focus and concentration is just these last two games, isn't it?
Jonathan, just going back, sorry, just
that's right,
taking away from our doom and gloom of the end of the season.
Yeah,
what's been your highlights or your enjoyable moments covering Reading? What's things have stood out for you? I know there may not be many in our current last few years, but what have you enjoyed, or what have you the games or experiences or things off behind the scenes that have meant a lot to you?
I mean, I guess it's hard to pick one or a few. I mean, obviously, kind of the sort of the big games, like the Fulham playoff semi-final, for example.
Yeah.
That was electric atmosphere, fans up for it. Under the lights, really great atmosphere and occasion, and that's what you enjoy the most and remember the most, those kind of iconic games, and obviously it helps that the Reading win as well. So I've certainly seen more losses than wins in my time, unfortunately, but that is how it goes. But yeah, I mean, there's all the managers that I've worked with have been good to deal with. Obviously, some probably a bit more reserved than others, but generally they have been very, very personal to you, and you do build up a rapport with them, and you feel part of the almost kind of part of the club to an extent, and you want them to do well, and when they do well, it's great to see, because it's a really unified effort, and when you get sort of like an away game, like at Fulham, was it last season, when they won 2-1, I think.
Yeah.
That time when certain Obi Ajaria scored some goals for once. That was great, and it's great to be part of, and great atmosphere, and great to see the players and the fans at the end of the game. That real close connection, which is arguably what you need to, or what helps to be part of a successful club, and what's been lacking for Reading sort of generally over the years. So yeah, there have been sort of games and moments, and seen some great goals as well, and seen some great players, both in Reading shirts and in opposition shirts as well. So it's hard to kind of pinpoint too many kind of specific moments. It's certainly been a roller coaster. Not to bring up too many cliches, but there's a lot of work behind the scenes that goes into to make sure I can do my job right, and I try to
What
do
does
that
that
to the best
involve,
of my
Jonathan? Just for
ability.
people that don't know, with covering the game and as you do, and I know you get some flack from people because Reading fans are like that. But what does it involve for you? Like how much time and and energy and having a young family as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Traveling.
the away games are the away games. If I have to go to Sunderland, I have to go to Sunderland. That's obviously, that's 1.5 days really, the journey up there and journey back, usually overnight it if it's as far away as Sunderland. And on my days off as well, I'm working or preparing stories for the following day or whatever. So normal work day is about 8:30 to 6 roughly, kind of sort of writing stories, researching stories, putting everything together, because it's not just writing the story, it's writing the headline, it's finding the right picture, it's cropping the picture, it's writing the picture caption, it's doing all the links as well, and so on and so forth. And it's just making sure there's enough new fresh content as regularly as possible, really, and always having things in the bank just in case of a rainy day, or if things dry up, or for whatever reason, it's good to have a few stories that can, less time sensitive stories which you can just pull out and put up online. So it's a juggling act, but kind of when you do get into routine, it does make things a bit easier. It does help, and just thinking back to when I started out, not necessarily as a Reading FC reporter, but in journalism just over 10 years ago, it was obviously completely different. It was writing for the newspaper, for the Reading Post, and we had like 2 days a week where we put stuff up online. It just shows how things have completely transformed in the past decade.
Good or
Obviously,
bad?
with the rise of social media. Well, I mean, there's arguments for both ways, so no point talking about it too much, because it is what it is, really. But things have evolved over time, and things like this, podcasts and videos and everything, and that's just the way it's gone. It for all its faults, with the traveling and the seemingly endless defeats, it is enjoyable for the most part. But yeah, it can be tough sometimes.
Eunan, but last question from you, mate.
Yeah, just thinking of that when you are attending games, and do you rub shoulders with the main journalists, or are there any journalists out there that you particularly follow, like Henry Winter or anyone like that? And do you ever sort of get into arguments about when they disagree with Reading's plights and things like that?
I wouldn't say we get into any arguments, I don't think. I mean, to be fair, like, you don't usually at Reading games, for the vast majority of Reading games, it's kind of us local journalists and BBC Berkshire and a couple of other kind of sort of national guys who do it on a freelance basis or whatever, and that's about it. I mean, you don't get any of the big hitters, so to speak, down at Reading games too much. Unfortunately, there isn't just that interest in Reading from a national perspective, so it's not worth their time coming to games. So unless it's like the playoff final or some really big game, dare I say it, Huddersfield against Reading on the final day, there might be a few of the big journos there, but yeah, I mean, you say hello to them, and they ask you questions sometimes, and they come to the odd press conference. There's a few at the Man United press conference for the FA Cup third round, but yeah, it's just it's more for them to get information off us, really, because we're the ones who have the detailed knowledge of Reading that they want to include in their articles, really. So
yeah, and that's when mentioning the Man United game, Paul Ince came out with, "I didn't get invited for a glass of wine," and later on in the season he talked about, I think it should be called Kloppgate. You know, his statement there. Do you ever, when you're talking to people, think, why did you say that? I've got to report that.
Yeah, I mean, well, whenever he threw the players under the bus, I just couldn't believe what he was saying sometimes. Particularly, I think at Cardiff away, when he just absolutely laid into the players. What was that, a 1-0 defeat? I think it was. I couldn't believe it really. Just sort of, yeah, just threw them under the bus. And if I was a player, I don't know. I mean, it's easy to say from the outside, but I would have serious considerations about whether I'd want to play with this manager if you're just going to consistently flake me to the media and to the fans. So yeah, there were a few remarks from Ince, and there probably have been with other previous managers as well. To be honest, yeah, it's difficult sometimes. They are in the thick of it and it's the heat at the moment, and you can understand some comments, but other comments, it's less excusable, and it's very easy to listen back and say, oh, why didn't you ask this? Why didn't you do that? And why didn't you pick up on that? But I say, when you're kind of typing and listening and thinking about the next question, it can be difficult to pick them up on that. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Kind of with a Saturday game and if there's no midweek game, then the press conferences aren't usually on a Thursday lunchtime, and by then everything has settled down and died down, and you're kind of looking ahead to the following game, and you don't really want to bring up too much of what they said sort of just over a week ago, because it's long gone, and intentions are elsewhere. So when people say, I wish you'd done this or done that, and I or other journalists probably wish the same thing, but in the cold light of day, it's easy to say all this stuff, but when you're in it, you've only got a certain amount of time to ask certain questions, and you obviously do want to do your job, but you don't want to completely rile them up to they end up banning you or something. So not really the ideal scenario.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
It's one last question, Jonathan. Like we've got Wigan Saturday, Huddersfield week Monday, isn't it? Are you going to be at both games? And what's your verdict? Go on, put one out there as a journalist.
Well, I think they will probably get a result on Saturday. I think they'll scrape a victory. It could well be kind of down to the last few minutes or whatever. Be some drama. I've got a funny feeling that Mate and Tom Ince may well be back as well. I've got a feeling that they've been saving them for the final couple of games, even Hoylett perhaps. I mean, kind of Ince is really the difference maker, isn't it? It depends if he performs, then Reading will probably perform. So a lot could be on his shoulders.
Do you think he might be back? Do you think Ince?
I mean, they've said all along that potentially the last couple of games. So, it'd be obviously great for him and great for Reading if he comes in and scores a goal to Stephen's safety. He'll be a club legend, wouldn't he? Yeah. I kind of, it's difficult. I mean, it's you like to think that they got even just 50% chance that they'll just be on the bench at least, and God forbid they're behind and they need them to come on. Hopefully there might be a couple of fresh faces back.
I'll be there, so I'm positive we're going to win.
I think this. They've had a clear week to prepare for it, and everyone will be kind of unified, and I mean the winless run has got to end at some point. Let's hope it ends this season, and then it's all to play for at Huddersfield on Monday week.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for your time, Jonathan. Eunan, I just round this up. Let's end it on a positive note. If we win our last two games, we can stay up. We could be relegated if Huddersfield are playing Sheffield United, but Sheffield United will beat them because it's the Championship. It's so straightforward. But look, it's going to be 2 games of tough football. All we can hope for is just get behind the team, isn't it? We can only do what we can do, and that's win our games, and the rest is out of our hands. Go to Huddersfield, relegate Warnock. Now that would be a nice way to end this episode.
Yeah, and hopefully all the bad news has happened last weekend when all the results went against us. Hopefully it'll go with us, and a win and a draw will be enough.
Let's hope so.
Like, we have 2 wins. That
Hunt's. I think
reason why we should do that.
Hunt's a positive manager. It's a good surname. I think it's one of the best surnames as a manager of Reading anyway. But we got to get behind the team Saturday and game at a time, isn't it? We get 3 points and we go from there. The pressure's then back on Huddersfield because they've been in the relegation zone. So come on, you R's.